Hold on. Okay, we should be live now. And
Going live on my end.
Yep. I might have to go through here. I'm probably gonna pull up on my phone the YouTube thing, so hopefully there's somebody I'm wanting to make a moderator. And it's easier just to click on it and make him a moderator. So, and I need one. But welcome to the channel. Welcome to the chat. This is going out to my motorcycle channel, Chasing Ghosts. And it's also going out to my other two channels, which is Tara Smith's Kitchen, my cooking channel, because that's where most of my subscribers are. And it's also going out to Tara Smith's Kitchen on Twitch. So, and there goes the Mastiff after a cat. But we're live, and I'm getting some people in here now, so that is awesome. Hello, DJ Play Nice. Hello, Ghost Shadow. How are you doing? And my guest tonight is Full Metal Corgi. If you're on my Discord, he is on there. The pictures of his bike are on there as well. He actually built an electric bike, which is something I'm interested in. I don't think the battery technology is quite there yet. I think it needs, basically you need more life, more distance out of it, and more infrastructure, ability to charge in more places. But I do think that's where technology is heading. And I've seen even some drag bikes that they've made that are electric bikes, and the speeds they got out of them and the power is just unreal that they could do that. It's just something I'm into. And I've always kind of tried to figure out with different vehicles how it would work. And I will, I guess, let my guest introduce himself further if you would like to do so.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey guys, I'm Full Metal Corgi. I'm over on Tara's Discord and kind of floating around a couple other servers. For a little background on me, I've been in manufacturing since I've been about 15. I went to school for aircraft electronics. I worked in aerospace for a little over 6 years, and I do engineering now. So the skill set to build the bike and everything comes natively to me. So when I say don't try this at home, I genuinely mean it, unless you know what you're doing.
Awesome. So what got you into riding motorcycles?
Honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of interest in it, but my wife and I were going on vacation, and we're going to rent a moped in Paris. Now, over there, you need some sort of license. You can't rent a 50cc with a driver's license like you do here. So, and to be honest, I'm not a small person. A 50cc wasn't getting me around anyway. So I went to Harley, got my motorcycle license. We got on this moped in Paris, properly binned it right away. And after going around for 2 days on it, we fell in love with the idea. And then about a month or two after we got back, I bought an NC 700X, and it's been downhill ever since.
Awesome. DJ, you're now a moderator, by the way. Okay. What made you want to build a motorcycle?
So it all started, it was frustration. It was honestly, there wasn't any, I'm going to do it for the environment stuff. It wasn't anything like that. I had a high compression motor in that KZ before. I was running 13.5 to 1 on a 1981 motorcycle. It was overboard, and I did head gaskets probably once every other month. And one day I just got fed up with it. I looked at how much the motor and the battery pack was, how much I'm spending on repairing this thing, and I decided at that point I sold the motor, sold the carbs, sold everything that wasn't bolted down on the bike, and I'm like, I'm doing it electric. I'm building something practical that can get me to work and back, and something that's going to cost me next to nothing to run. And honestly, it's kind of come down to it. My commute cost me 75 cents to go almost 40 miles. So I can't complain.
How about your electric bill? How much, I mean, if you're charging, did it significantly raise your bill? Was it noticeable?
Not really. I don't know where you're located. I'm in Northern Illinois, and I pay about 10 to 11 cents a kilowatt hour. And the long story short of that, it cost me about 75 cents to charge the bike up. And that gets me about 40 miles if I'm driving like an asshole,
That's
which I
very
usually
cost efficient. That's extremely
incredibly
cost efficient.
Now,
I,
if you have a car or something like that, yeah, it's gonna go up a bit. But this thing uses next to no juice at all, and plus I can charge at work, so little side
right.
benefit. It's free then.
That helps when your work has a place you can charge. A lot of the grocery places and stuff are having places for electric vehicles. That's another thing. Your charger, is that just universal, or do you have to carry adapters or something with you to charge when you go places?
The only charger I can't use is a Tesla. It's completely different. But in the United States, we don't have an official standard yet. But the most commonly available one is the one I have on the bike. It's called the J1772. And 90% of the charge stations you find that aren't Tesla are going to have that plug. It took a little electrical crafting to trick the bike into talking to the charge station so I could get power. But I did it myself. You can buy the kits online already pre-made for like $20. I just happen to have access to the materials I needed. So, but I don't know. I don't know about the infrastructure with charging. Like I said, I don't know about where you live around here. Within my battery range, which is about 40 miles, I probably have 50 chargers I could go to. I live in the suburbs.
Right. I live
So my
outside of
grocery store has my other. Yeah. I mean, I go to the mall. I got a bank of chargers I can plug it into. The ones around us are mostly free, which rules because if I don't even want to pay the 75 cents, I just plug it in at the grocery store down the road for about 20 minutes, then drive it home.
Does that give you a full charge or 80% or what?
About 80%. I have a relatively small battery, so I can go from 0 to 80% in about 15, 20 minutes, as long as I'm using 220. Excuse me. Off of a regular house outlet, it takes me about 4 hours to charge to completely full.
Okay.
But that
So
80% I can do in an hour.
I would love something like that for a commuter. I actually looked at the Livewire and I thought about getting it. And I got a Fat Bob instead of the Livewire. And but it interested me. But there's no place to charge between here and work. I can't if I set something up at work, they would let me charge it. But there's nothing between here and there. Now, if I go across the bridge, there's actually not too few places once I get into like Atascocita, Humble, and then we're talking grocery store parking lots, that sort of thing in that direction. But the direction that I go to work, there's nothing. And in order for it to be viable for me, my ride to work is 45 miles one way. So I would need to be confident that it could do 100 miles and get it back home for it to be viable for me for a commuter. Now, if someone has a shorter commute, like say, if I I live in Huffman, which is Lake Houston. If I worked on the other side of the lake, I only had a 5-10 mile ride, or, maybe even if I went all the way to like US 59, something like that, I'm a good 40 minutes away from an interstate. It's Houston area, but far northeast of Houston. If I worked over there, it would be different.
Yeah, see, my commute is 18 miles one way. And when I built the bike, I built it primarily as a commuter. So I took one look at it. I looked at how much I wanted to spend, and I go, I'm only going to build a battery pack big enough for what I need. So I can get to work and back on one charge, barely. But I can also get to the mall nearby. I can get to the grocery store. I can get to anything within 20 miles is fine. And like you two, I wanted to know about range. So I disabled all the safeties on my bike and I rode it until it was dead, 100% dead. Not the 5% left that most manufacturers like Harley and or Livewire, Zero Chica, they won't actually kill the battery because it could do damage. I said, screw it. I want to know exactly what this can do. And I went until the battery pack actually failed.
It's like the truck that I drive for a living right now, the fuel gauge doesn't work. It hasn't worked in forever. So I have to keep track of my miles per gallon, how much fuel that I put in. And I know I burn more fuel in a headwind, stuff like that, and I have to constantly calculate my distance when I have to fuel what I have to do. And it's honestly, I think everybody should know how to do that. It's, I'm used to older vehicles, nothing working, how far you can go, that sort of thing. It's like second nature to me. Even if the fuel gauge worked, I would still write everything down, but you have to know the range of what vehicle you're in. Motorcycles a little different because our range is shorter than cars. Even if you're putting gas in your motorcycle, like the Fat Bob, I'm not going to go over 150 miles without fueling it. I'm probably going to fuel every 100, 120 miles, and I'm going to put fuel in it. I already know that wherever I'm going, that's just what I'm going to do. And go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, you know what, with the e-bike, the range anxiety is real. Like I said, I only get 40 miles, and that could vary between 35 or it can be 50 depending on how I'm driving. And I don't have a gas gauge. All I have is a readout from a voltmeter. Doesn't even tell you if it's full or empty. I just have to know. I know at 108 volts that I'm fully charged, and I know at 86 volts I'm dead. And I have to just watch that, and you can watch that voltage tick down as you drive. Or you want to be a little spirited, you'll whack the gas to beat someone, and you watch that just drop.
It's no different with gas.
Yeah,
to me, that's basically
but
your gas gauge, basically. So it's not gas, it's electricity.
But imagine if you hit the gas on your truck and you watch that gauge drop down to about a quarter tank and it never came back up.
Haven't gotten that amount of fuel mileage before, but yeah. And the limitations on you're really out and you can't just push it to a gas station. You got to get it somewhere where you can actually charge it, But I'm sure you've got apps and stuff too as well that can tell you where places to charge it are, correct?
Yeah, actually, I'm just going to throw this one out there just because I use it. It's PlugShare, and it tells you what type of outlet do you have to pay for it, and even if people want to, not many do, but say, hey, you can use my house outlet if you want to charge. That's a little nuts in my opinion, but it's on there.
Yeah, there's people really promoting the electric cars and electric all that stuff that would actually do that. I have friends from all over the spectrum, from just because I'm involved in so many different things, and some of them are pretty far left hippie, some of them are pretty far right, what have you. There's generally some topic of discussion that we kind of overlap on, and especially some of them over on the left, I could see them doing that, letting someone in, charge their car, what have you. It's I could definitely inner city, yeah.
Yeah, I built my bike too, and I knew that running out is a very possibility. I got it set up that if I want to, I can reach up under the gas tank, which is hollow, and I actually have a plug for a regular extension cord too. So I'm making sure I can charge no matter what. I'm not going to deal with having to find anything fancy. If someone's got an extension cord plug in, I can take care of it.
Right. What was the next thing? All right, so we got that. We got charging. I noticed on the pictures of it where I don't know if you had all your batteries in or not, but you had extra spaces where the batteries go. Is that to make it more powerful, or would that increase your distance?
It's kind of a weird question. You got a brief science bit aside here to understand the concept. when you talk about electric motors, there's two things that come into play. You have your voltage and you have your amperage. Your amperage you can think of as your torque. More amps, more torque. It's almost perfectly related. The voltage you can think almost like horsepower, but it's really your top speed. The higher your voltage, the higher you can spin the motor. And so adding more batteries, I could get more top speed, but because of how electronics work, I don't get any more torque. I don't get more amps.
Right. Where's your torque come from? Is that the amps?
So, yeah, the torque comes from the amps. My battery pack, per the manufacturer spec, can put out 350 amps. After you do a little electrical magic and you send it to the wheel, it turns it to about 600 amps.
Okay.
And it sounds like a lot of power. It's not. If I put
What's
it into
like foot pounds?
I'm gonna actually get it on the dyno in a couple weeks, but the like I said, the manufacturer states it's about 250 foot-pounds of torque.
That is insane.
But I like to think that, but you got to remember, there's no gearing. I don't have a transmission to bring that torque down to multiply. I don't have a front sprocket or a rear sprocket. So
Is that just like
the best I
smooth?
can yeah, it's smooth. It because of how it is, it feels like a 250cc bike off the line. And then from about 10 miles an hour to about 60 or 70, it'll pull like a 600. And then after that, it feels kind of like a 3 or a 400cc. So the mid range on it is absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
But
Does it
that
feel like
initial right off the bat.
Does it feel like it's kind of spooling up or something then? Like if it starts off like a
No.
250 and then it goes.
Not
No.
at all. It's perfectly linear, and it throws you off a little bit at first.
Mhm.
So you're used to feeling at the low RPMs and low speeds. You hit the gas, you have a lot of torque. You can lift the front wheel up off the ground. If you dump clutch or something like that. And you don't have that. But then when you're going about 30 or 40 miles an hour and you go open throttle, you all of a sudden have about double the torque you normally would at that speed. So you feel like you take off like a bat out of hell. But in reality, you have the same acceleration curve. It's almost perfectly linear.
Yeah,
So
because usually when you look at the dyno, you watch it go up like this and then it curves around and comes back, and there's like that cross point in there. And yours would just be going up.
The dyno on the electric bike for about the first 5 or 10 RPM, once again, due to a lot of electrical stuff like stall currents and just your controller not trying to kill itself, goes almost straight up, plateaus perfectly flat, and it gets to the end of its essential power range and then just drops straight down. So the 0 to 60 on it is about 5 seconds, which isn't crazy fast for a bike. But that 0 to 60, when you hit the gas, it's perfectly linear from start to finish. The 0 to 10 time is the same as the 10 to 20, is the 20 to 30, the 40 to 50. It doesn't matter how fast you're going. You hit the gas, you accelerate at the same rate. So it's a little weird once you're going at like,
more controllable. It sounds more controllable in a way, because both of mine, the power band is just like right there when you're shifting, that you hit second gear to fifth gear, and under 4 seconds, you're doing 60 miles an hour. And it's a lot of power that you're hitting it. It sounds like, in a way, the electric sounds a little bit more controllable. And then when you get up to speed, it sort of levels out. You said it drops down?
Kind of. So like you're saying, you've hit the gas and then 4 seconds you're going over 60 miles an hour.
Right.
And that's kind of the problem when you have that much torque. You have the gearing to bring it up. Most 600cc bikes put about 1,000 foot-pounds of torque to the rear wheel in first gear. But once you're going, like if I was going 35 miles an hour and I go to pass a car, when I hit the gas, I don't shift. I don't have to rev the engine out. It's always exactly where it needs to be in the power band. So it just goes. So by the time you pass that car, you're in a 35 zone, you might be doing 50 or 60 because you just
Right.
don't have that wind up. So it basically, if I was to hit the gas on it, it'll jerk you back for about a split second,
Hmm.
and then it's just perfectly smooth. There's no
There's no
build up.
more.
There's no peaking. No, it's just
Okay.
you accelerate right to your max acceleration and you stay at
Torque is extremely addicting. I think anyone that
it.
rides
It's
a
very
motorcycle can figure that one out. I had a charger pull up to me today and he's revving his engine and I'm like, okay, okay. Just red light, having fun. Yeah, torque is amazing. But I was just wondering because, like, one of the things, like, of course, I like Harleys. My dad had a Harley. I've had other bikes. I had two of the 750 three-cylinder Kawasaki two-strokes. Those bikes
yeah.
were awesome until you got up to about 80 miles an hour, and it's like they wanted to walk the road, kind of like a Jeep. That's probably why they call them a
Yeah.
Widowmaker. My first bike was a 52 Harley that I pushed home, and I wish I still had it. And I was too young. My mom actually made me get rid of it. She thought I was going to kill myself on it, and I came from there. But one of the things that companies like Harley have, one of the problems they have is they don't really have a good beginner bike. You know, they have
No.
close to a good beginner bike, but we're talking people are less and less mechanically inclined. It seems a lot of them. There's still those people out there, but there's so many people that haven't even driven a standard, stuff like that. And they're trying to learn a motorcycle, how to ride one, and they've never shifted gears before. They've never done anything like that. And they kind of need like that little 250 MSF kind of thing. So my thought is, being able to control it where you've got the same bike that you already know you're already comfortable with the weight. You're comfortable with, something that you could have as a starter bike that doesn't have too much power. You could limit the power to like a 250. You could do the freeway speeds that you need to do, but you're not going to have an insane amount of torque. And then when you're ready, turn it up to the next stage, get it instead of going out and buying another bike because, okay, I've outgrown this bike here and, now I want a bigger one. Now I want some more power. Now I want some more of this, whether it's you put new batteries in with a different amperage or change the number of batteries or something where you could use the same bike and just build on that, different levels of, okay, this was my starter bike. Now I'm putting more power. So now it's like a 400 from a 250. Now it's like a 600. Now it's like 1,000, as you go.
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. All that would have been handled mostly through the bike controller. That'd be the most cost effective way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So because I'm building it and I'm buying the parts myself, I have a large degree of freedom with how I program things. And the manufacturer of the controllers doesn't care about me. And I mean that in the greatest way possible. They have almost no liability for what I do. So they gave me complete freedom to tweak anything. I could break the bike if I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to. There's no safety net. So you can absolutely set it. So, hey, it behaves like a 250cc. And then you can lock it out with a password if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Or then you can go in and you can change it so it behaves like a 400 or a 600. You're only limited by the hardware you put in there initially, like what you're talking about with batteries. So if
Mm-hmm.
you put the best pack you can put in there, it's all done in app. You just program it in an app. Like right now, I have mine set up with 3 speed modes: an eco mode, which sets the battery and I can get 50 to 60 miles of range on it. I have my normal driving mode, which is what I was talking about earlier, with 0 to 60 of about 5 seconds. Or I have sport mode, which exceeds the rating of my motor, my controller, and my battery pack. it voids the warranty by flipping a switch. And that puts out twice the power the batteries are rated for and 3 times what the motor is. I personally know it can handle it because I've done it. But when you put it into that mode, all bets are off.
Mhm.
And it absolutely will shred the rear tire in a heartbeat. I don't mess with it much because of the amount of torque.
I'm not good enough with the computer yet to put the pictures up of the bike, but if you want to see the bike, it is under motorcycles in my Discord. And of course, it's under Full Metal Corgi. That is his name on Discord as well. It's just
ugly.
awesome. But it's actually, no, it kind of reminded me, because my son is wanting to build Bruce Wayne's bike from the last Batman movie. Not the Bat bike, but the other one. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit, you know? Just, of course, that one's a little longer, that sort of thing. I kind of thought that at first when I saw it.
Honestly, I'll take a compliment when I can get it. That thing was a 1981 Kawasaki. It was shaft drive. I went the hard way. I did not get a new frame to put this thing together. Now it has a 1981 Kawasaki frame. It has a 2002 ZX7R swing arm. It has a 2004 Yamaha, I think it's 04, Yamaha R1 shock that I converted to mono shock. Because every time I tried to do something to make this look like I ran into another problem. So I was like, I can either get a new frame do it the right way, or I can be stubborn and double down, get out the welder, and do some modifications, which is what I ended up doing. So it absolutely didn't need to be as hard as I made it. But I was not going to deal with trying to start over again.
I think we're getting to a point where we kind of came full circle technologically where, okay, 150 years ago, if somebody needed something, they could build it, you know?
Yeah.
There's minor things where, okay, you go to a blacksmith, but you could kind of a lot of people could do most of that stuff themselves. They just did the heavy work for them. You could build most of what you needed. You could build your house and everything. And technology is coming around where now we have 3D printers. Now we have all this stuff where you can make a lot of the things that not that long ago you would have to order. And I'm just kind of envisioning a day where you could have a 3D printer kind of thing in a program, and you could select.
1 second on the 3D printer.
Huh?
I said, give me 1 second on the 3D printer. I actually got a hit on that. So, the bike has to be made out of aluminum and steel and actual stuff. But while I'm a decent machinist, I can't do certain things. I don't have access to the right equipment. So if I want to send something off that I drew up in CAD or SolidWorks, it costs a lot of money to get something made. But it only costs about $10 to get something 3D printed, and you can do it. I use this for fitment purposes beforehand. So it's not so much about using the part, but the application of, well, the limited technology. This is plastic.
You can make jigs and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is basically a jig. I use this to check all my measurements and everything else like that. But then after I figured out that fit, I sent it off to my machine shop to actually be made out of 7075 aluminum.
Right, because, you know, one of my other interests is firearms and stuff, and I make 1911s, and you need a jig for that, making the slides, making the frames, and, you know, you have a jig, the holes go here, and that allows you to cut everything. And you may not be able to build the whole thing, but you could make the parts you need to build it, or make a jig to make it out of something else. You could, you know, basically you've got the pattern, you know, where it's almost like Replicator at Star Trek with extra steps, you know. You just walk up, select, I need this, this, and this, and then you have this package. Because, you know, the customization, you know, once you have the batteries, the motor, and that sort of thing figured out, it's like, okay, well, I want it on this kind of bike. I want it on a cruiser. I want it on a dual sport or something like that. How would the electronics and stuff work, say, if you did like an adventure bike or something like that? Something like the Africa Twin or the Pan American, where it's actually you're going to put it in the mud and it's going to get wet or something. Is that going to mess up the electronics?
It doesn't have to,
Doesn't
but
have
you're
to.
going to spend money to do so. So I like to say you can have, there's three elements to this. There's the price, there's the practicality, and there's the performance, but you can only pick two.
Mhm.
So you could make an entire waterproof system. People build electric dirt bikes all the time, but you're going to sacrifice some of that space that you'd use for batteries to make the case to house them. You're going to, pay either the fabricator or for the material itself to make the housing for it. You're going to lose a little performance because you can't cool the battery pack and the controller as easily, or you add weight to add a water cooling system. So it all kind of has this drawback. So when I did mine, I knew I was going to be commuting with it. I knew it was going to be a road machine. And I didn't have to do all that waterproofing. If you pull the side panel off on my bike, bus bars and everything are right there. All the wiring is right there. It was built with ease of maintenance in mind, not durability. So my
Someone in
whole
the
thing's set
chat,
up in about 2 minutes. Oh, go on.
right, someone in the chat here asked if I'm going to be getting an electric big rig too. Eventually, probably. They've already got them. My problem is the range on them and the infrastructure. If they had it where when we backed in our parking spaces, we just plugged in and charged our batteries overnight, and that battery could get me 700 miles down the road, which is going to have to be good for a lot more than 700 to trust it. I wouldn't have any problem with that, which also gets me into the other question, because I was talking to you earlier about the braking and the charging and how my thoughts were on, like, with an 18-wheeler, I'm going through the mountains, I'm riding the Jakes, that sort of thing. I've got axles that they're not doing anything for power. You could put motors on them, you could generate electricity, but then there's the braking ability and the added braking ability. And how does that work on the bike? And what would its applications as far as other vehicles and stuff be?
So on the bike, it actually works well enough. I don't have a rear brake. My rear brake is entirely electrical. It either is passive when I let off the gas, it regenerates some of the power for the battery, and it feels kind of like engine braking. Or if I pull on the brake lever, it actually sends electricity to the motor to power it the opposite direction to keep me from, to stop me passing. It feels like slamming on the brakes with a really good anti-lock system. But at the end of the day, physics is still your enemy. So if you had an electric big rig and you drove it uphill, when you come back down, even if you use that regenerative braking to charge your battery back up, you'll never make up the amount of energy you spent going up. And right now, I think the best we can get is somewhere around 30% efficient. So in my case, I get 40 miles on a charge. I might get 1 extra mile at most. I use it for the braking aspect. But on something like a bigger going down the mountain, you would essentially use it to slow yourself down, charge your batteries. But I think one of the most underrated thing on it, you're not using your brakes. I've driven through the mountain. I've destroyed brake discs and pads. So
They heat
not
up so
having
bad.
that maintenance in and of itself would be great.
Right. One of the problems with vehicles with normal brake pads and stuff, you add weight, is your brakes can glaze over because they get too hot and you have no brakes. And to be able to have the electric motor basically hold that for you, there's a safety aspect there. You're not going to lose your brakes, hopefully.
No, yeah. So obviously your problem would be the electronics failing, but since there's no moving parts, it would be more of a software issue, or you would overheat something. But I'm assuming that if you're putting it in a big rig, you're building it to spec.
Right. Is there any kind
The
of
only
fail?
issue you can, yeah,
Like,
the only
okay,
problem
if
you
you
could have is that regenerative braking doesn't work when you're at a full charge for battery because you're trying to put power back into a cup that's already full.
mhm.
So you would basically be using the battery as your brakes. So it could be a range extender, or it can use just as much power as going up the hill to get you down.
Mhm.
So it's really situational dependent.
Okay. There's just so many different applications for the technology and more vehicles than just the motorcycle. I think the motorcycle is awesome. Me and my son are both wanting to build a motorcycle right now. And of course, he's younger. Some of his ideas I look at and I'm like, it looks like something out of one of his comics. And I don't know if I have the ability to do that, but I still like building things. And I find it amazing that you built your own electric motorcycle. Did you say that your state doesn't have a registration process or something for it? Or would you
So
know
I'm
how it would
joking.
work in
I
states that
joke.
do?
It depends on the state. I joke about it, but the state of Illinois doesn't require emissions for motorcycles, which is kind of nice.
Hmm.
But in doing so, when I go to register it, they don't ask anything about the engine. They don't ask all they know is it's a motorcycle, it's this make and model with this VIN number. So am I probably violating some DOT law somewhere? I almost guarantee it. But is
So is it just
I'll just
registered as a
blame myself when
Kawasaki?
it comes to act. Yeah, it's registered as a Kawasaki KZ1100. The make and model hasn't changed. I'm pretty sure on the title it still says an 1100cc engine, but I brought it up at the DMV and the lady looked at me like she didn't want to deal with it. So I ain't complaining. It may vary by your state, but for me it was just as easy as re-registering.
That works, and that's going to go
I'm probably
straight.
violating something. I'm probably violating something somewhere, but as far as I know, nothing.
Let me see. Let me pull up my other questions here. See if we got through all of them. Need to write them down better. Okay, costs. What was the cost getting into it, and what did it end up?
So if you were to pay for everything out of pocket, for what I did, and like I said, I made it a lot more difficult than I needed to. It'd probably somewhere be in the range of $4,500 to $5,000. But that's not the whole story. Everything on the bike that was related to the internal combustion aspect of it, I managed to sell. That's the carburetors, I parted out the engine for bits and pieces to make a little more money in the long run. Even as far as some of the headlight components, the speedometers, anything I didn't need. And I managed to recoup about $1,500 in total. So the actual out of pocket on this was probably about 3,000, which is it's still a good chunk of change, but definitely manageable. But like I said, I didn't have to pay someone to do welding. I had to get a few machine parts made, but I could make all my bus bars. I could weld my frame. I could install the electronics competently enough. So there wasn't a whole lot of labor cost that went into it. If you have the ability to do it yourself, by all means, it can be a money saver. But if you have to outsource it, it's almost into the range of probably $8,000 or $9,000. I didn't do any of the labor, so it's all dependent on your skill.
And considering what motorcycles cost, that's not, that's definitely well within the ballpark of what you're paying for a motorcycle, anyways.
It is, but you can remember at the end of the day, you're getting something that has, for the most part, for the price space, less range, less power, and less
Mm.
practicality. In all honesty, like I love it, and I love electric vehicles. I am that left wing hippie, but I can see the reality of it. If I wanted to spend more money, I could make that bike have a 200-mile range, but I don't pay for $4,000 in batteries. I could make that bike go a lot faster. I don't want to pay another $1,200 for a controller. or a bigger motor. There's a motor right now you can go online and buy and have it shipped to your house for $15,000. It puts out 200 horsepower and 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, and it'll fit. And a motorcycle, it's about this big, but it's $15,000. So if you got the coin to spend to go that route, absolutely. But in my case, I wanted to spend as little money as possible and get to work back. So I could have built the batteries bigger, but I didn't. Could have built the motor bigger, I didn't.
It works for you. You customized it to your personal use, your needs, what you wanted.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
is kind of what
exactly what I need.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking earlier. I just envision a day where somebody's like, I need it for this, this, and that. And it's just, okay, you put this many batteries and you put this motor, and here you go.
That's pretty much the case. I chose the batteries I did for the reasons I needed them. They are not the most efficient batteries. They're not the most energy dense. They're actually, you feel a lithium battery, it's light. You need something this big to mimic a lead acid this big. But my battery cells are only about half as light as a lead acid. But I picked them because they were relatively cheap. They put out a good amount of power, but more importantly, it's kind of an overlooked thing, but the safety of it. Your regular lithium ion batteries can absolutely catch fire. I won't pussyfoot around that. The batteries I picked are a different chemistry, and they don't.
Will they let you put it on a track?
Oh, absolutely not. There's no way. As much as I'd do it, it just the range. The one I get 40 miles of range. If I went wide open throttle the whole time, I'm probably getting closer to 15, and that's not even accounting for the heat that it makes. And when you do power figures for an electric bike, like I like to say that this bike has about 60 horsepower and 200 some foot-pounds of torque. I can only put that out for about 30 seconds before the motor kicks in and goes, hey, you're going to break something. You need to stop. And then it dials back to power to, in all honesty, probably about 20 or 30 horsepower. And after it cools down a bit, I logically know that, hey, I can push this really hard again. But for a track, it's not going to happen.
Well, the electric bikes and stuff around here, they don't let them on the track because they don't have the ability to fight the fire if they catch on fire because of the batteries, or at least that's the excuse they give.
It's an absolutely valid concern. And I'm lucky enough to be in a place in life where I have a nice garage to work on things, and I could afford to get a Class D fire extinguisher for metal fires and have the ABC fire extinguishers handy. For your regular lithium polymer batteries, the fire is absolutely a concern. When they catch fire, you can't put them out that easily. The batteries I have in my bike are called lithium iron phosphate. And while they technically are flammable, you really, really can't start them on fire from overcharging them or discharging them. Or you can even throw them into a bonfire, and it takes probably 30, 40 minutes for them to catch on fire. They're incredibly safe. And I picked it because my garage is, for lack of better term, directly below my daughter's bedroom. I'm not messing with that. So I could have had something with more range and power. I chose not to for the reasons important, which was safety first and cost second. So absolutely something to consider. They have batteries out right now that you can actually cut in half with a miter saw, and they won't catch fire. But they're expensive. They're not the most efficient in space. They put out a dumb amount of power. I mean this in the most nerdy way. It's great. It's something about the size of a can of Pepsi, and it'll put out 400 amps. It's
like everything else. I'm sure you're willing to pay.
Yeah, if they cost $25 each, and to get to the voltage rating I'm at, I would need 42 of them. And even if I did that, I'd have half the range. I need to buy twice as many. And I did the math; it'd be like $6,000 for these batteries. And I'm like, I don't need them that bad.
Comment out here from Edward Espinoza asking about Harley's electric bike. Harley bought a company by the name of Livewire. The bike has a lot of power. It's, as far as the commercially available, it's already put together for you. I was watching like Spike's channel. I don't know if it was on his channel or when he was with Yami Noob. They were talking about. I think that's the one they like the best, and but they still don't have a whole lot more. I think basically that one has what, twice the range of your bike, and that's it. I think that one, what is 100, 120 miles, something like that.
I think like that. And then I think that they did testing. They had the live wire when he was still at Yami Noob, and he did the
Yeah.
Energica. Now,
Mm-hmm.
now the live wire is objectively a better motorcycle than what I built. It looks
Mm-hmm.
better, it's faster, it has more range, it has more options. Mine's the most analog electric bike you'll ever do. It's a speedometer, and that's it. But at the same time, what does the live wire cost? 18,000 ish.
Yeah.
So as much as I'd love a live wire, I can get a live wire for 18,000, or I can build this for 3,000 and pocket the other 15. So
And
if
also
this
you
is going to be
have,
my only motorcycle,
and you also have that extra, you know, when somebody asks you about your bike, you buy a live wire. Yeah, I bought this from Harley, what have you. Somebody asks you about your bike. I built this. That's on a whole different level. It's a whole different weight and credibility there, you know,
you know
to
what?
be able to
I
say
live in the
that.
Midwest, and when I go into the rural Midwest,
Mhm.
I don't mean to characterize a lot of people, but there's a lot of anti EV sentiment. And I'm pretty sure the fact that I built the bike's the only thing that kept me from
Harlem
buying
in
it.
Texas.
So yeah, absolutely.
It depends on where you're at
So
around here. Because I live outside of Houston in Texas. I live far enough away from the city that I can get in for work. If you're down in the inner city, they're very EV friendly. You know, you're out here where I live, they're liable to run you off the road, you know, because they're, it's weird that the politics gets into that. And
so
you might as well have a, huh?
without getting into the politics of it and whether or not you
Mm-hmm.
agree with why the people feel the way they do, it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to understand that where it comes from. Like I said, I live in the suburbs right now. I can go anywhere that I really need to with that bike within 30 miles and charge it for free. That's huge. If I drive 10 miles north to the Wisconsin border, I'm in the rural area and I can't go anywhere with it. I
Mm-hmm.
literally cannot make it from one charging station to another. The infrastructure is not there.
Right.
So I kind of get it. Because you look at this, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can only go 100 miles. That barely gets me into town.
Yeah.
So when someone comes around taught it is the greatest thing ever, you look at them like you're out of your damn mind.
Right. And I understand that. I grew up in the country. We went to town twice a month for supplies, you know, and the ranges that some people, depending on where you live, that you have to drive just to go to Walmart, you know,
Yeah.
it's, there's a viability there. And then, of course, if you have that commute in to work, like I was saying, there are no charging stations. It's 45 minutes to the yard where I pick up my truck. There are no charging stations. But if I got a job, instead of going south, if I went um, west just a few miles, there's a charging station, you know?
Yeah.
But if I go south and east of my house, there's not a charging station for a long time. You know, it's like you got to get nearly to Beaumont before you find a charging station. That's
Well, I
like,
mean,
yeah.
I go to northern Wisconsin to visit my in-laws quite often, and there's a stretch of road where it doesn't matter what electric vehicle infrastructure you put in place. They got signs, next gas station, 30 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't matter if you put those stations in there. It's with the current technology, it's not practical. You can do DC fast charge, and I think
Right.
right now the Ford Lightning is kind of up there with it can charge the fastest. That or one of the Nissans. I don't remember, but in the end of the day, it's about 20 minutes to 80%. that doesn't sound bad, but let's be honest. If you're, it's 6 o'clock at night, you got screaming kids in the car. Do you want to sit at that station for 20 minutes
Right.
to get that charged before you go? Absolutely not.
Whereas, I'm filling up
So
my
it's
bike
not that.
I'm filling up my bike every 150 miles, but I pull in, I fill it up, I go. I don't even have to go inside the building. I can pay at the pump. Here we go. And I'm gone. So.
Exactly. My bike has a small tank. The battery pack is relatively small for what it is. If I drive and stop at the grocery store on my way home, I'll be at 25% battery. I plug it in. I can sit there for 10 minutes, be close to 80%, and then go home. To me, that's not a big deal. I'm by myself. But to try and do that off the non-fast charging would take forever, relatively speaking. It'd probably take an hour. And actually, I got into it. I'm terrible about this with YouTube comments, but I got into it with a guy today about it, talking about the cost efficiency of it. There are chargers around here you do need to pay for, and some of them are up to $4 an hour. Now, if I did the math on that, I would have the miles per gallon equivalent of about 35 miles a gallon if I paid at that charger, because it takes me about an hour to get 35, 40 miles of the charge. So you can look at that as like a $4 a gallon equivalent. Yeah, that kind of sucks. I gotta be real with you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So that absolutely is a factor that I don't think a lot of people consider, or they don't want to admit. And like I said, I fall on the left hippy dippy line of it, but at the same time, I'm a bit of a realist. I'm in a situation where it doesn't matter. I got free chargers. I can charge with cheap electricity at home. I'm on nuclear power. I charge with green electricity. My head is so far up my own ass with it being green, it's not even funny. But if I go 5 miles north, I'm on coal power. That changes the equation.
Right.
I don't have infrastructure to charge it. So it's kind of, you're losing the benefit.
Yeah, I wish they'd get the politics out of a lot of things because there's just so much viability in them. But it's like, I was looking at the solar panels for my house. And what I was asking the guy was, can I go off grid with it? So if I could go off grid with it, I would be interested. It's like, well, you can go for 2 or 3 days. I said, no. If I get pissed off and I don't like the city and I just want to make my own electricity and just run off my solar panels, can I do that? If the world ended tomorrow, something happened, who knows what, can I power my house on these panels? All I could ever get out of him was, you can power your house for 2 or 3 days. And at the minimum package of what they were going to put on my house, they were financing my house for another $62,000 added on top of it. So it's like the cost benefit just wasn't there. But I could envision a world where this technology gets a little bit better. And let's not forget that they make those solar panels with coal. It's the grade of sand that would be needed is too expensive and not common enough. So they end up making that glass with, the most readily accessible source of carbon that they can make it out of, or at least from what I understand, they do. But it just seems to me like you could set up the houses just as you build them with basically their own power systems, where we're not all relying on this big grid and everything. Your house, it looks like something out of, what was that one, Star Wars? No, Star Wars. Nerds are going to kill me. Star Trek. They had the young guy playing Captain Kirk, and they show him that little house. It looked like it had a windmill or something like that. This vision of the future where your house could provide everything there. You put into the grid if you need to, but it's self-sufficient, and then the whole state doesn't get shut down in an ice storm. It's.
So I looked at solar for my house. It would cost me, and my state has special tax incentives, so that's half the reason it's as cheap as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And do with that information what you may. But it would have cost me about $25,000 to $28,000 to put them in. and I
Mhm.
could generate on a good day about 110% of what I use. And I could backfeed into the grid. Yeah, I'd get some money, but because our electricity is cheap, it would have taken 10 to 12 years to pay off. So
Mhm.
the financial incentive wasn't quite there. But like I said, I lean left and I'm kind of the eco nerd on it. I ran the numbers on when is it carbon neutral, including the manufacturing. And that was about 7 years if I was getting my power from coal, natural gas, something like that.
Mhm.
So because I get my power from nuclear, that's a complete wash. So I wasn't
And then,
really in it for the eco stuff, but something to
how
consider.
long do they
So
last? Because is it like,
right now,
okay, they last 20 years, and so then you get 13 years of, the use there, or
I think it's about 15 to 20 right now. And don't quote me because I cannot remember where I got that number.
that's
But
about
at the
what
end of the day, like,
I'm remembering.
yeah, you have
Right.
storage problems. I would need to put a battery bank in my basement. So because every day is not going to be perfect, and you're gonna need to store power. Like your lights don't use a whole lot, your TV doesn't use a whole lot, but your air conditioner does. If you have
Yeah.
central, forced air, your um, air handler uses a ton. Your microwave, your stove, your oven, if they're not gas or something.
Mhm.
So as an emergency supply, I could absolutely see a battery bank being a viable thing. It's something to actually
Mhm.
live off and plan your, like you said, if the world ended, to plan your survival around. I don't know if I'd risk it yet.
Right, right. I live in a hurricane prone area. And for after a hurricane, is it worth it when I could just have a generator for a lot cheaper and run it for 3 days? You know,
As much,
with
yeah,
that
as
much
much as
money.
I'd like to say yes, solar battery would be great because I used to live in Florida and I absolutely understand generator, 100%.
Right,
Because
right,
I'm
right.
good with electronics. I'm good with electrical stuff. It's my literal career. I don't think I could fix a broken solar panel,
Hmm.
you know, but I have good mechanical intuition. I could probably fix a generator. There's something wrong with it. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but there's a good overlap.
Yeah, I could fix a generator. I understand carburetors. The older, the better. The it's generator I could deal with. Solar panels, I'd be completely screwed. It's
Yeah,
they're just
and who
pretty
knows?
pieces of junk if they break.
Well, and who knows? Like we grew up. I'm 32. I'm old enough to remember carburetors and pre-internet, and young enough to have grown up learning with them and growing with them. So I have some inherent advantages just because of my age. But that knowledge I have from fixing lawnmowers or snow blowers,
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I got good mechanical intuition for that stuff. My 4-year-old can work a smartphone almost better than I can at this point. By the time she's my age, maybe fixing circuit boards and solar panels is going to be like that carburetor
Second
knowledge that
nature.
we have or something. Like they're
Yeah,
going to look at this and be like, oh yeah, I can understand how all this kind of works together. It's not the same thing, but I understand the principles.
that's how my
So
19-year-old is. He's amazing with computers, stuff like that. Second nature. He grew up. All this stuff was there. The internet's been around for his entire life. Me, I remember when music was put on MTV. I was born in the 70s. You know, I remember
I was
when,
born in '90, so
right, right, right. I was in the high school. So yeah, everything was definitely told. I can remember putting leaded gas in a glass jug to take home to put in the lawnmower, you know. And I have an opinion that
not
leaded gas actually smelled better.
I'm not going to deny you there because I've used a lot of 100 low lead, and I'm a little biased. So I agree. Now don't go huffing leaded gasoline, kid. But you know, on that note too, with you're talking about the leaded gas, we're using all these batteries. You can make an argument with the lithium mining. Is it worse for the environment? Is it better? One study says one thing, one says another. I personally believe that it's genuinely better, even though it's still pretty terrible. But it's like this is kind of that transition, like right when the Model T and gasoline engines were actually becoming a thing.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, well, we're not going to have enough gas. We're not going to be able to make enough. It's pointless to make these gasoline engines. There's never going to be enough gas. We can do this. We can't get the oil necessary. And look at where we are, or not even where we were 20, 30 years later. So we're at the absolute infancy of making this a mass use technology.
Mhm.
There's no, I don't think there's any reason to believe that in 20 or 30 years, maybe I'll probably be dead by the time everything's electric with no qualms. But like my grandkids will see a time where they're going to look at those old lithium batteries and be like, you're serious. You actually use this kind of moment.
Right.
So I see that as a reason to keep pushing for what we're doing. And I didn't start off building the bike with that intention, but the further I went down the rabbit hole with looking at this, the more I kind of looked at like, you know what? When my daughter's 16 or 17 years old, her first car is probably going to be electric. And I'm going to go, I built one of those like 10 years ago. You don't remember it, but I built one. She's going to look at me like, yeah, Dad, it was a piece of crap. I've seen pictures. It only went like 30 miles.
Right.
Going to be
And
the
the
equivalent.
technology is, I mean, I think we're about a decade off from real viability on a lot of things when it comes to electric power in vehicles. And that's just because the battery technology specifically. But the way technology has increased in my lifetime, and it's like it doubles, it triples, it you look at my phone and what my phone can do. I remember being in high school, we had one computer. It was in the library. Everybody got to use it because typing class was on a typewriter. And we got to see this computer. They hooked it up to the internet, this new internet thing that couldn't do anything. It took you so long to use it to try to figure out to do anything. It's like, this is pointless. It's cool. I'd rather go play Nintendo or something. It's way better than this internet
I'm
stuff.
never going to use this.
Right, right. And now my phone has more power than that computer did. My phone has more power than probably the space shuttle in the 80s as far as computing power. You know, the don't quote me on that, but it's probably a good bet.
It's actually not far off. A bit of trivia on this one. The computer that landed us on the moon during the Apollo programs has less power than your, remember the old TI-84 calculators?
Mm-hmm.
They have the one that landed us on the moon had less processing power than that. And that was, my dad was born the same year someone landed on the moon. But like my grandparents remember that. And she'd shit a brick if I said, yeah, I'm having a live stream session with someone halfway across the country right now off my pocket computer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it used to be a thing of comic books. The guy had like a TV, phone, watch, whatever. They had a shoe phone on one, like some TV show way back when. And the stuff that used to be science fiction, we've now surpassed most of it. The science fiction of, 50 years ago. It'd be interesting to see where that goes. And
Absolutely. And even with the battery tech.
Hopefully I'm here to see it,
And obviously, to keep it topical, even with the battery tech, I built this bike about a year ago. And in that time, even with all the inflation, all the supply chain issues, the price to get those same cells that I got went down because they're outdated now. They were top of the line ish when I got them. And
yeah, you buy something now and it's outdated when you start using it. Whether it's a phone, a TV, a truck, anything else, there's a next model. The next and the greatest is out so quickly.
Like if I went to start this project now, if I spent the same amount of money, I would have twice the battery range with the same amount of power. that I get now. And the fact that that's only 1 year difference is
Mhm.
mind-boggling. So there's no reason to think that in 10 or 20 years, given it depends on a whole bunch of other factors, but from a technological point of view, from purely that, regardless of the economy or the politics or the technology we're going to have available, graphene batteries, solid state batteries, or aluminum air batteries, are all great things to look into. And I mean, they made a battery out of diamonds that never runs out. It essentially it can't put out a whole lot of current, but if you wanted to run a watch until the end of time, it'll almost do it.
But then there's the other part of it too, where okay, our technology is getting quicker, and I think a lot of the things that we're thinking of we'll see in 20 years, we'll see quicker than that, just because of how fast it's changing. It's okay, it was going twice as fast yesterday, it's going 4 times as fast today. Tomorrow it'll go twice as fast as it did today. It just keeps compounding how fast it's going. But then again, our species has a bad habit of screwing things up, especially when it comes to environment, when it cuts costs and it's on the other side of the world, so people here don't see it. So you have all the mining for like the lithium batteries and stuff like that. That's also a concern of mine, is what damage are we doing? And number one, people, essentially slave labor, and then what looks close to strip mining and the conditions that people are working in, you know, to create these things.
It's genuinely awful. What you're thinking of is actually mining the cobalt for the batteries. The lithium's typically done with the salt brine process, but that's a nerd discussion for a different day. But
Yeah, we
yeah,
got two mines in the States.
we're I guarantee you we're doing irreversible environmental damage. Back in the
Mhm.
30s and 40s when we were mining for oil and doing that, it's kind of like the cigarettes. It's fine. We're not doing anything bad. Then lo and
They
behold,
dump
we
kerosene
found
in the
out
creek.
we don't know. We genuinely don't know. We're probably, I always wonder what's going to be the asbestos or the lead paint of
Mhm.
my generation. And it's probably
Right.
going to be something with the lithium batteries or something like that. But at the same time, we can't even begin to fathom the kind of technology we're going to have. Like, we can't even imagine
Right.
it. You're a gun person like me.
Mm-hmm.
I just bought a new Glock 45, and
Mm-hmm.
it came with I put a red dot sight on it. It had a cutout for it. The red dot is the size of my thumb. It has a solar panel on it. It's good for 50,000 hours. If you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have looked at it and be like, you can't make that. You can draw it all you want. You just can't.
And what if something like that ends up being like the previous generation radar guns the cops were using, when on a foggy night, we used to say they were playing laser tag because you could see the laser coming out of their radar gun hitting the cars. You're coming down the hill in California or something like that, and you could literally see them shoot the cars. Well, those were the radar guns that were giving them all testicular cancer, because they'd stick the radar gun between their legs while they're sitting in the car, waiting for somebody to come by. Who's to say that something like that, oh, this little innocuous thing with this power, what have you, then you find out, oh, it gives you cancer, like 20 years from now, and we had no idea now at the time we're using it, and who's gonna know what it is?
And you're 100% right. Like I said, when it comes to the mining and the extraction of materials, I guarantee you we're doing irreversible damage. There's no
Mhm.
qualms about it. We're probably doing damage we don't even know is going to be a thing. Some of the materials we're using are gonna end up being horrible for you. We don't know, and it's kind of a risk you have to take with evolving as a society. But at some point, we're gonna run out of luck. And I just saw
Mhm.
this pop up. Yep, the AI today is insane. They can design the perfect car in parts like bones. Absolutely, I
AI
mess
is
with
what scares
AI
me.
art all the time, and
Yeah, the AI at a
AI
certain
doesn't.
point
I
scares
don't
me.
think AI is going to cause a problem. I think AI is going to be the catalyst without getting too on top of first stuff because
Mhm.
once again, we can't imagine the problems it's going to cause. And I think that's kind of where we sit with to bring it back, the tipping point with the electric vehicles is we have a
Mhm.
solution for it. We know this will solve the problem. is it going to be an objectively good thing? Or is it going to be like releasing an invasive species to kill off one thing and then you have a problem with another?
Right. We keep creating more
we don't know.
problems by trying to fix them. It's like, okay, let's put this fish in the lake over here. They'll take care of this algae that's been causing this problem, but this fish eats all these other fish that do this thing, and we just compound and make the problems worse. So yeah, that is definitely a problem. But I don't know how much.
The upside. I was gonna say the upside is at least now we're a little more armed with what we know about. We know twice as much as we did yesterday and the day before that.
We have so much knowledge at our fingertips that most people don't use. We have more knowledge at our fingertips than the greatest minds had access to during the entirety of their lives. Instant access.
Absolutely.
The things that they would have to spend weeks searching the greatest libraries in history for.
There's a joke I saw a while back. It goes, if you had to blow someone's mind from 1940, how would you do it? And it goes, I'd say I have this computer in my pocket. I can get any information from anyone, anywhere in the world in a second. And I use it to look at pictures of cats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm scrolling Instagram looking at bike videos and stuff like that,
Like I literally could be the most productive member of my species right now. I just choose not to be.
Right. We're highly distractible. I don't know how much longer you want to go on. I said I was going to try for 30 minutes to an hour. We're at an hour and 11. We can go longer if you want to. Or
I was going to say, I got to wake up in the morning, but at the same time, I don't know if you want to round it out with like a closing statement or anything like that as far as everything we've covered. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds good.
You got any more questions off the top of your head? Anyone in chat yelling anything they want to know?
Yeah, if anyone in the chat has a question, pop it up there and I'll see if that can be answered. If I haven't been following the chat close enough, I'm trying to do too many things at once. I'm not ignoring you. I'm trying to catch it over there. But let me pull the YouTube thing up over here and see if there's any questions.
Or, if anyone thinks anything after the fact, I'm on your Discord. You can tag me. Miss Full Metal Corgi. I'm usually pretty good about getting back to stuff. But I'll just close it out with, I built my own bike. I shot from the hip for the majority of the build. And I would advise anyone that wants to do it to not only do research into it, ask people that have actually done it. There's a lot of practical things that just don't come up with internet research. But it's absolutely viable. You just have to tamper your expectations to what it is. You have to build for the purpose. You have to sit down and go, I want this to do this at this cost. And if you do that, you're not going to be disappointed. If you think you're going to have something equivalent to a gas engine bike for a fraction of the cost, you're going to be disappointed. And, my thoughts on electric vehicles going forward, it's a solution to the problem we have now. It might not be the right solution. It could be making it worse. But with what we have now and the knowledge, it's one of the few things that people like you and me as individuals can actually do that has tangible results. And it's kind of why I wanted to come on here. It's kind of why I preach about building my bike, because if I can convince you to like 2 or 3 people that, maybe it's not the worst idea, I've done more than I could have without this platform to do so, before I built this. And I understand that in my lifetime, I'm not changing anything. Probably not in my kids' lifetime either. But, my grandkids, my great-grandkids down the line, they're going to look at what I did, figure out what I did wrong, because I guarantee you I did. And hopefully they fix it. And those little increments we step forward, it's probably going to be 2 steps forward, 1 back. But we keep doing that, we can eventually solve half the crap we got going on, hopefully. Or we just die out as a species because we just YOLO'd it. And I'm kind of 50-50 on whichever one's got to happen. So that's about all I got.
All we can do is to the best that we can based on the knowledge that we currently have. You know, you take that knowledge we have and try to apply it in the best ways. Hopefully we get a good outcome. There's more than the dimensions we're able to see. Our senses, I mean, we see such a limited spectrum of the light spectrum to begin with, you know, and all we have is, you know, like our sight, our smell, our touch. There's just so much that we have to use machines and everything to understand. So we just take all this information in and try to make the best decisions we can with it, you know, as far as when it comes to environment and what it's going to do to it. We're not making gasoline and what looks like whiskey stills and dumping the byproducts in the creek so that we can run Model Ts anymore, because that was polluting the creek. There's signs down the river when you get closer to the Gulf not to eat any of the fish in there, where people are always fishing at. Right next to the sign that says do not eat the fish. They're fishing right there. The reason is because there's so much mercury in the water and everything down there from, you know, the different processings and stuff that they did, you know, 60, 80 years ago, 100 years ago. So who knows what it's going to be later on? Who knows what that cobalt's going to do? Who knows what the radiation from that Fukushima nuclear power plant is going to do that's in the ocean from all the water when they washed it off, that some scientist 100 years from now is going to be able to track back by, like, you know, I think there's some kind of, like they can tell where that radioactive thing came from, you know, like some sort of signature.
Yeah, it's an isotope of cobalt, actually. But,
right.
yeah,
And they'll be able to track the isotope from here. Who knows? Right. What?
Yeah.
But
we can't even fathom the way they're going to tell us we screwed up.
Right. Kind of like, you know, every so many years you look back at yourself and say, my God, I was stupid. You know, because you have that whole different perspective of a few more years of knowledge. As a species, we're kind of the same way. You know?
100%.
Right.
100%.
I really appreciate you coming on the channel. You're awesome on the
I appreciate you having me on.
Maybe I'll have you back on at a later time or something if you want to come on. You're welcome anytime I'm doing a chat to hop in. You know, just ask. I'll send you a link. And it's awesome. This is my first live actual motorcycle chat with a guest, and you're the inaugural guest. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
And I find the bike amazing. Look at Discord, go into the motorcycle section. You'll see the bike. If I was better with computers, I'd pop it up here. But everyone's going to have to go to bed now. And I appreciate everyone who has watched this chat. You're all awesome. And I'm going to have to hit the end broadcast button. One day I'll figure out a good segue to end. I just haven't done it yet. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you.